Hello guys, welcome back to the Johnny Gets Cash channel. I've got something very special to show you today. It's another cheaper than scrap car. You've probably seen my previous cheaper than scrap videos where I had a Ford Focus come in that I paid just £200 for. Well, today is something very similar. It's the same year, it's also a 2003 car, and I've also paid £200 for it. The car itself, I'm really happy with actually. Although I've only given £200 for it, the car has covered just 56,000 miles. If you follow my social media platforms, so Instagram, Facebook, things like that, you will have probably seen already what this car is. But if you haven't, let's go and have a quick look and I'll show you around the car and explain a little bit more about it. Right then guys, so here it is, the MG ZS that I've paid just £200 for. As I mentioned just then, this car's covered just 56,000 miles from new. It's 20 years old and it's done 56,000 miles. I think that's remarkable, and the fact they're giving £200 for it is even more remarkable. If you're sitting there wondering how have I given so little for a car like this, check out my previous videos where I explained in the Focus series how that car came to me. This came in through the same means as that one. I run various adverts for cars wanted, and this is one that's come into me. Now, the story behind this car, very low mileage, yes, it's had very light use, but for the last year it has been completely unused and it's been sitting on someone's drive gathering moss. So it's got no current MOT on it, that's not a problem. It hasn't been used for over a year, so I'm gonna have to do various things to it to get through another MOT. That's not a problem, but the owner did just want rid of it. So it's come to me relatively cheaply. Well, I say relatively cheap, it's coming to me very cheaply, but the car does want a few things. Overall, pretty straight. There's no real damage to speak of on the outside of it. There's a few minor pin dents on some of the doors, sort of thing you get with a, you know, take a car shopping and a trolley bumps into your car, little things like that. But come on, it's a £200 car that's 20 years old. We're going to be able to forgive it. The only couple of pin dents I'm referring to are, if you look at the swage line on this door, if I can catch it in the light, there's something around about here. You might be able to see it. It's very minor. I'm not going to focus on small bits like that because, once again, it's a very cheap car and it's 20 years old. So I think it's in remarkable condition given those facts. Anyway, so no MOT for a year. It's been sitting unused for over a year. As you can see, it's started to turn green in a place or two. As I say, if you were following my social media platforms, you will have seen pictures of this car already, so you'll already be aware that it was in and the sort of condition it's in. It drives really well. I have driven this one and it drives really well for a car that's been sat unused for such a long time. I've got to be honest, I haven't driven a ZS for years and years and years, and I'd kind of forgotten how much fun they were. It's a lightweight car, isn't it? So these days it feels quite zesty. Now this isn't a 180 horsepower V6 version. This is a 1.8K series, so it's only got 118 horsepower, or at least it did when it came out of the factory. So it's not even the quick one in inverted commas, but this is a very, very fun car to drive. I had a great time driving it. I'll show you inside, because inside is in really, really nice condition as well. Obviously everything's a little bit dirty, but again, we'll forgive it. The only negatives in here, we've got a bit of a saggy headliner, and the front door cards, the drivers and the passenger's door cards, the adhesive is given up, and you can see the foam and the lining have separated. Now that brings me to my next point. Where am I going with this car? I'm looking at this and I'm thinking of all the things I could do to it to make this as good as possible, because it is, as I say, a 56,000 mile car. I think it could be a really, really desirable piece if I did everything right and made it as good as possible. But finding parts for these isn't the easiest job in the world at the moment, because obviously a lot of them have gone to scrap over the years. I would like to do as much as possible to this, but I've got to be sensible as well, because I am going to be selling it on, of course, and it's not completely carte blanche. I can't just throw money at it to make it the best example in the world. However, I'm going to do all I can to make it a really, really nice example, and that means doing things like those door cards, the headliner, etc. There is one pitfall with this car I'll be honest about. When I bought it, the owner said to me it's had fastidious servicing its whole life, but they don't have the service file. That's been lost. I don't know if that was a house move or what. I don't know what the excuse was, but the fact of the matter is, as I stand right now, don't have any service history for this car. It's not the end of the world, because as you know, with the last cheaper than scrap car, the Focus, I had no service history of that. So what I did is have all the big ticket items done. And I'll probably end up doing the same with this MG, to be honest, because I can't really sell a car with no service history, and it makes sense. I like people who buy cars from me to have peace of mind that they haven't got much to worry about. So although it's an old car, I want to try and make it as tight as possible for the next owner. But that is really the only downside to this one. I absolutely love the car. I really, really do. It drives, as I say, I can't fault the way it drives. The brakes, of course, having sat for a year, the brakes are a little bit crusty, but my plan is to completely change the brakes, so new discs and pads all round. Other than that, I really can't fault it. The driving experience is better than you could hope for. The gearbox is tight. There's absolutely no crunching or whining or anything like that. It doesn't hop out of gear. It drives like a 56,000 mile car should, to be honest. I'm really, really happy with it. So I'll talk you through a few of the things on the outside now, but largely, in terms of the way it looks, it just needs a really thorough clean and a paint correction. Obviously, we've got that exhaust tip is definitely beyond the pale. That needs sorting. Little things, silly little things like the badges, you know, it needs a new badge kit. They're really, really small items and easy to do, and they will lift the look of this thing. Everything works as well on the car, so electric windows and everything, they all work, no problem there. So with all of that being said, let's hop in it now, go for a quick drive, and I'll talk you through the experience as we're going along, and hopefully you'll get some idea of how nice this one is. But anyway, let's hop in and go now. So you join me out on the road, and the driving experience of this MG is, as I've said before, perfect. It's exactly what you'd expect from a 56,000 mile car. There's no particular rattles or bangs, there's nothing on the suspension. The gearbox is tight, doesn't whine at all. I'm really, really pleased with it, and I can't fault the way it drives. Now, obviously the brakes are a little bit lackluster, but you can't have a car sitting for over a year and expect the brakes to perform as well as they ever did. That's not a problem though, because I have already planned to change the brakes as part of the refresh. Aside from that though, there really is nothing I can fault about the driving experience of this car. Even though this is just the 1.8K series and not the V6 version, I would still class it as a nippy car, because of course it's a little bit older, so the car's a lot lighter than a modern car, so whenever you're driving something a little bit older like this, it tends to feel a lot more zesty than it truly is, and that all adds to the charm in my opinion. It feels like an event driving it. It feels fun to drive. I suppose you could say you're more connected to the car. I suppose that's a little bit of an artistic way of putting it, but I do get it. You feel more connected to a car like this. I think it just really, really is an all-round great package. It's not expensive, it's usable, it's fun to drive, it's got potential collectability built in. Really, what more could you ask for? If you're looking for your first classic car, your first collector's car, I think you could do a lot worse than an MG ZS. Now, I'm not just saying that because I'm going to have to sell this at some stage, although I am going to have to sell it at some stage because, as you know, I sell everything. I honestly think this is a really, really safe bet for someone who's wanting a bit of a fun, usable classic. I'm over the moon with it. I'm so pleased I bought it, and obviously for the price I paid, I really couldn't be happier. A big part of the reason that I absolutely love what it is that I do is because I get the opportunity to buy cars like this, things you don't see every day. And in a lot of cases, even if you do see them, most people just look straight past them, whereas I get a lot of enjoyment out of buying and driving things like this. So that leads me on to my next point. I haven't paid very much at all for this car, you know I haven't. So I could actually, I'm pretty confident I can actually sell this right now and make a fairly good profit as it stands. But of course that's not how I do things. I'm a firm believer in making things as good as they can be, and in this case I think if I make this car as good as it can be, I will be able to achieve what I really want to with it, and that is to find it a new home with an owner who will cherish the car, enjoy it and keep it for years and years. I think this is really going to become a sought after modern classic, and if I can make it the best example possible, the new owner has got every chance of keeping it on the road and enjoying it for years to come. And in my book that's better than a quick profit. Maybe not the most sensible move, but that's just how I like to do things. Now clearly this is no Rolls Royce, but what this MG ZS is a very cheap and affordable way into classic car ownership. Now I know you've heard me say that recently about the MGF I bought, and I stand by that. But this MG ZS is something a little bit different. Not only is it a cheap and affordable way into classic car ownership, it's a practical car. It's got 4 doors, it's got 5 seats, and it's got a boot. It's a very, very usable daily vehicle. So not only would you have an affordable modern classic, which is in theory only going to go up in value if you look after it, it's something that you can use. It's not a sports car that is sort of a sunny days only type deal. This is a year-round usable vehicle. And that to me makes this car extra special. And I've got a lot of time for cars like this, especially as cars like this are so thin on the ground now. A big part of the reason that they're so thin on the ground is the scrappage scheme. If you recall, they were offering £2,000 a car at one point. Now, if you at the time had a rough example of one of these and someone offered you £2,000 for it, I guess I can see why people took it. Now, I can't say I would have taken the scrappage deal, and I'm sure that you guys watching this right now wouldn't have taken that scrappage deal, but I do see why people did. And as a result, it's made some cars just like this MG ZS, really quite thin on the ground. So whereas once upon a time you might have looked at this and thought of it as nothing special, nowadays you've got to ask yourself, is it a worthy investment? And I think the answer is yes, it is. So I'm willing to admit that I'm absolutely no expert on these MGs at all, and I'm sure a lot of you guys watching this know a whole load more about them than I do. So if there's anything you think I should be looking at in particular on this car, you know, problem areas, things that need to be checked regularly, things that you think I might overlook, drop it in the comments, because I do read them all, and as you know, I try to get back to you all as well, but I do read all your comments, and your collective knowledge, for me at this stage, will be invaluable. Obviously, I want to make this the best it can be, and a little bit of inside knowledge will really help me out. So if you do know these cars and you know something I should be looking at or areas I should be checking, please do let me know. So with all of that being said, the big question is, what could this car potentially be worth? Obviously I've given very, very little for it, and I am going to spend money on it, probably a considerable amount of money to make it the best it can be. I'm in two minds. Obviously I'd like to make this an amazing example, and the best example anyone's likely to find, but of course I do have to keep in mind on profit. I'm not looking to make loads and loads and loads of money out of it. I want it to be a good example, but obviously I do have a business to run and I do need to make money on this. So what's it worth? When all's said and done, my gut feeling says potentially something like £2,500, but I could be wrong. Maybe I'm low, maybe I'm high. I suppose we're gonna have to wait and see. I feel like that's about the figure for this car, but I haven't done my research. So I know you guys have heard me say this so many times before, but I honestly fall a little bit in love with every car I work on, and already, even though I've only just taken this one in, I haven't put hands on it yet at all, other than to do this test drive, I'm already developing a real soft spot for it. It's such a great car. I can see why people just fall head over heels with these things. Now, obviously, I would happily keep it as a daily. I've already got about 4 cars which I call dailies, so I really don't need to keep it. But I can definitely see this one becoming a firm favourite. I guess I'm just a bit of a sucker. If I come across a car that surprises me, I just naturally want to keep it. I think that's just the way I'm made. Probably not the best trait for a car dealer to have, but it's the way I've always been. And I think I'll never change. So the only thing that's potentially holding this car back is that lack of service history. I will be going back to the guy I bought this car from and asking if he's found it, but let's be honest, I'm not gonna hold my breath on that front. It's not a biggie though. It's the same as with that Focus I bought. That had no service history. All I had to do there was get a fully in-depth and all-encompassing service done. And I'll get that done by a local garage that I use. So everything that is done to this car will be provable through an invoice. And that will go with it when I sell it. This being a K-series car with no proof of a head gasket being done, I think although there's absolutely no faults with it, no signs that head gasket's playing up, I think I may as well get the head gasket changed because I know that everyone's going to ask for that when I come to sell it. So preemptively, I think I'll just get it done along with everything else. So yes, a lack of service history, but I'm going to have such a detailed and in-depth service done on it. I'm hoping that'll take the edge off it for any potential new owner. The other question mark is tyres. Now the tyres that are on this car at the moment, they seem to be fine. There's no perishing, which is unusual for a car that's sat for so long. But although there's no perishing and the treads do look good as well, I think I'm probably going to have to factor in a new set of tyres because it comes under the banner of safety, and with a car that's been sat and is a little bit of an unknown quantity, I think you can't be too safe. So I'll probably do new tyres on it as well. So I've got quite a bit of money to spend on this thing one way and another. But honestly, I think it's worth it. For all of the above reasons that I've said in this video, I really think this is worth spending some money on and getting right. So there it is, guys. The next cheaper than scrap car, an MG ZS I've given just £200 for. Now I think that's an absolute steal. As I said in that video, I am absolutely over the moon with the way this thing drives. I would really like to hear your comments on the car. Anyone who's owned one, what's it been like to you? As I mentioned just then, things I should be looking out for. Ultimately, I want to get to know this car a lot better. It will be a lot better by the time it leaves here. But that's enough waffle for this video. So until next time, thank you ever so much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Cheers.